You're wanting to learn how to crochet, but you don't know where to start. You go into many yarn stores and there are so much yarn around you, you don't know what to pick. But that's why I'm here. My name is Anika Rao. I've been crocheting since I was 7 years old, and I'm going to be showing you all the tips and tricks and supplies you need to start crocheting. Most important things when you start crocheting are your yarn and your hook. So you first might be asking, what type of yarn do I use? Well, I do have some recommendations to help you get started. My absolute favorite yarn is the loops and thread yarn if you want a worsted weight yarn. This is a medium 4-weight yarn, and that is one of the best sizes I would recommend for beginners. As you can see on the label right here, you see the word medium and then the number 4. That is the type of yarn you're wanting to get if you're looking for a easier, thinner type of yarn to use. Another fun way to choose your yarn is you can get some yarn that has different colors in it, because when you're a beginner, changing colors can be really intimidating, and when you have a skein that changes colors for you, it looks so much cuter and is so much easier. This may be a little controversial, but I also suggest using a bulkier weight yarn. This is a super bulky weight 6. So if you look on the label, it says super bulky and then the number 6. The reason I like to recommend these for beginners is because it's not too thick where it gets hard to crochet, but it's also not too thin, so you can make a lot of projects much faster. If you want to work on a blanket or a scarf for your first project, you will be able to finish it in less rounds and less stitches, but still be able to practice how to crochet. Now that you got your yarn, you're wondering, what type of hook should I be using? Well, that's really easy. As you can see, there is a whole wall of just crochet hooks. My personal favorite hooks are the hooks that have the ergonomic grip, because it makes it easier to crochet and makes it easier when you have to worry about tension. When you're crocheting, you can either get a pack of hooks that come like this, and normally packs of hooks are metal hooks and they don't come with the ergonomic grips, or you can get hooks individually. The Loops and Thread brands is amazing. They are quite affordable, and it's a lot cheaper to just buy the hook to your yarn size. If you want to invest in a hook, then you should get the Clover hooks. These are a little more pricey, but are so good and they last a long time. Now that we have different options for our hook, we have to actually figure out what type of hook size we need for our yarn. So if we're using a super bulky yarn, and my favorite brand for super bulky is the Chanel Homes, and that's in Michaels, you want to look at the label, and on your label you will see a little hook sign and then the number. This number is what they recommend to use a hook size for this yarn. Whenever I use this yarn though, I make plushies with it, and I like using a smaller hook. So if this says it's a size 8, I like to size down to a 5, because then the stitches are a lot tighter. But if I had to recommend this yarn for beginners, I would say to use a size 6mm. Alright, we gotta find a size 6mm hook. Fortunately, Loops and Thread and Clover do not have a size 6mm hook. If that's the case, then sometimes I just like to size up or size down. So, like I said, I like using a 5mm hook, so I would get this 5mm hook, or if you wanted to size up, you can use a 7mm hook. If you're using the Loops and Thread yarn, like again, you would go to the back and you would see, okay, it's a 5mm hook. Then I'd look back, and again, the 5mm hook is right there. If you were wanting to use this yarn to make blankets, I would suggest using a size 7mm hook. Then your tension is a little looser and you can actually get the blanket effect. But if you want to make amigurumis or plushies out of that thin yarn, then I would suggest using a 4mm hook, or even a 3.5mm hook. Now that we have our hook size and our yarn size, I'll tell you some other supplies that you can have that will help you make crocheting a lot easier. Another controversial thing that I think about crocheting is whenever you're starting as a beginner, I think you should start with plushies. As long as you can get the single crochet, which is the basic stitch, and you can do that a few times to make about a scarf, then I would suggest going in to make an easy plushie, like maybe a chick or a whale. I do think the first project you should ever do, and this is what I did, is a scarf, because scarves are small in width but long in length, so you can do rows really fast, but also practice as much as you need to. If you're working with plushies, you do want to get stitch markers, and these help with keeping your rows and remembering your stitches. So if you need to do something on round 5, you can put a stitch marker on round 5, then go to round 7 and be like, okay, the stitch marker is where round 5 is. Another thing I'd like to recommend is darning needles, and I do not like using plastic darning needles which look like this, just because I feel like they break, and metal ones are just more durable and you can keep them for longer. And the final thing that I would recommend, and they don't have it in the stores right now, is a stitch counter. I'll put a picture up here, and these are really helpful if you need to count your stitches or count your rows, because there are so many times where I say, okay, I'm gonna remember round 7, then I'm gonna remember round 6, but then I can, you know? So that's a lot easier to have if you're starting off as a beginner. Now there are some do's and don'ts that I do recommend when it comes to crocheting. I first do not recommend starting off with this type of yarn. You can see how thin the yarn is, and whenever you're working with thinner yarn, you have to use a thinner hook, and for these types of yarn, you have to use a size 3mm hook, and then that gets to be really small, and then, you know, it just gets hard after a while because you take forever to do a project. And I do have to say, once you're able to finish a project, you'll be able to crochet, because it's always so defeating when it takes forever to finish a project. That's why chunkier yarn or a size 4 medium weight yarn works the best. I would also stay away from these fluffy yarns, because when you're crocheting, you are not going to be able to see your stitches. Whenever you're using a fluffier yarn, it's just a lot harder, and you're basically crocheting like you can't see, and if you're a beginner, it's a lot harder to crochet. Also wouldn't recommend any yarn that has texture in it, because when you're crocheting, it can be really hard to see your stitches again, and it's basically like you're crocheting without seeing. And finally, this is something that I would just suggest if you really are a beginner, or you are starting for the first time and really don't have any experience, is stay away from really dark color yarn, especially black yarn, because whenever you're crocheting, you are not going to be able to see your stitches with black yarn. Even dark blue yarn or dark purple yarn. I would suggest with maybe some lighter color yarns. Any kind of dark color is going to be impossible to see. This yarn too looks so fun, but again, it's just not going to be a good start if you're really starting to crochet, if you want to be able to make projects. I'm not saying that you absolutely can't, but I would suggest starting off with a different type of yarn that I have suggested, just to get an actual start in crocheting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it helped you start off your crochet journey. If anybody's watching that does know how to crochet, comment down below some of your favorite tips or tricks for any new beginners, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!